Here's something nobody talks about openly. The smarter a man is, the harder he often finds it to attract and connect with women. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. Intelligence is supposed to be an advantage in every area of life. But when it comes to dating and attraction, high intelligence without emotional awareness doesn't just fail to help, it actively gets in the way. The painful irony is this: the same mental qualities that make intelligent men exceptional in their careers, the deep analysis, the strategic thinking, the attention to every detail, become the exact qualities that sabotage their success with women. And most intelligent men never figure out why. They blame the women. They blame the dating culture. They blame bad luck.
But the real answer is hiding in their own psychology. This is Liza from Secrets Inside the Mind, and today I'm breaking down the 7 psychological reasons why intelligent men struggle with dating, and more importantly, what the psychology reveals about how to turn intelligence from a barrier into a genuine advantage. Engagement, CTA number 1, around 1 minute. If you're an intelligent man who has struggled to create natural magnetic connections with women, subscribe right now, because this video reveals the specific psychological patterns working against you, patterns you probably don't even realize are happening. Keep watching until the end, because the final psychological reason is the one that causes the deepest damage to attraction, and almost no one addresses it honestly. Section 1. The psychology of intelligence in dating. Why smart isn't always enough. Before we break down the 7 reasons, you need to understand the foundational psychological principle that explains why intelligence can become a dating liability. From a psychological perspective, attraction operates primarily through emotion, not logic. Women don't decide to feel attracted to someone through rational calculation. Attraction is felt through energy, through presence, through emotional resonance, through how a man makes her feel in the moment. It's an emotional experience, not an intellectual one. Intelligent men have a fundamental psychological challenge here. Their minds are conditioned to approach everything as a problem to be solved. They analyze, they strategize, they evaluate, they optimize. And these cognitive habits, while extraordinarily powerful in academic and professional contexts, are psychologically misaligned with how attraction actually works. Here's the core psychological tension. Attraction thrives on spontaneity, presence, and authentic emotional engagement. Overthinking, the default mode of the intelligent mind, destroys all 3. Every moment spent analyzing what to say, how to respond, or what her behavior means is a moment stolen from genuine presence. And presence is what women feel attracted to. From a psychological standpoint, this creates what I call the intelligence trap in dating. The smarter the man, the more sophisticated his analytical capabilities, and therefore, the more potential interference between his intellectual processing and his authentic emotional expression. But here's the critical insight. Intelligence itself is not the problem. The problem is intelligence that hasn't been integrated with emotional awareness. When intellectual capability is matched with genuine emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and presence, it becomes one of the most attractive qualities a man can possess. The goal is integration, not suppression. Section 2. Reason, tapish, niyan, overthinking. When the mind becomes its own worst enemy. The first psychological reason intelligent men struggle with dating is overthinking. And this is the most pervasive, most damaging pattern of all, because it operates constantly, invisibly, and automatically. From a psychological standpoint, intelligent minds are wired for deep processing. They don't just react, they analyze reactions. They don't just speak. They evaluate the impact of words before speaking. They don't just feel, they examine and interrogate their feelings. This depth of processing is powerful in complex domains, but in the moment-to-moment flow of human interaction, it creates a devastating problem. Lag. Human connection operates in real time. Conversation, flirtation, attraction. These are live, flowing, spontaneous experiences. When a man's mind is processing everything at depth before responding, the natural rhythm of interaction breaks down. She feels a hesitation. She senses something is off. She experiences the interaction as stilted, forced, or uncomfortable, even if she can't articulate why. Here's what's happening psychologically beneath the surface. Overthinking is fundamentally a fear response. It's the intelligent mind's attempt to eliminate risk, to analyze every possible outcome so thoroughly that failure becomes impossible. But women don't experience this as preparation. They experience it as uncertainty, insecurity, and lack of confidence. Psychologically, confidence is communicated through decisive action and natural responsiveness. When a man's responses feel calculated or delayed, the signal his behavior sends is not, "I'm being careful." It's, "I'm unsure of myself." And uncertainty is not attractive. Overthinking also destroys authenticity. Instead of expressing genuine emotion and instinct, the overthinking man produces filtered, calculated responses designed to minimize risk. But what women are responding to is not the perfectly crafted message. It's the genuine energy behind spontaneous, authentic expression. Here's the psychological solution. Intelligent men need to understand that imperfect and spontaneous beats perfect and delayed every single time in dating. A quick, genuine response that's slightly imperfect creates more connection than a polished response that took 5 minutes to construct. The goal is not to eliminate analysis. It's to trust instinct enough to act before analysis can intervene. Section 3. Reason number 2, emotional blind spots. High IQ without emotional fluency. The second psychological reason is emotional blind spots. And this is where the intelligence trap becomes most painful, because intelligent men genuinely don't see what they're missing. From a psychological perspective, emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence are distinct cognitive systems. A man can have an exceptional IQ while having significant deficits in emotional awareness, empathy, and social attunement. And in dating, emotional intelligence matters far more than intellectual intelligence. Here's the psychological reality. Women communicate primarily through emotional signals: tone, energy, body language, the space between words. They're testing not just what you say, but how present you are, how attuned you are, how safe they feel with you emotionally. If you're missing these signals or misinterpreting them through an analytical lens, you're having a completely different conversation than she is. Intelligent men often make the mistake of treating conversations as information exchanges, but women experience conversations as emotional events. She's not just sharing information when she talks about her day. She's inviting emotional resonance. She's not just describing a problem when she vents. She's seeking empathy, not solutions. Here's what happens psychologically when an intelligent man provides solutions instead of empathy. She feels dismissed. She feels like he's not really listening. She feels like the emotional dimension of her experience is being bypassed in favor of logical processing. And that emotional disconnection directly undermines attraction. From a psychological standpoint, the solution is developing emotional attunement, learning to track emotional signals rather than informational content. This means listening with your whole presence rather than your analytical mind. It means responding to how she feels rather than what she's logically saying. It means resisting the impulse to fix, solve, or analyze, and simply being present with her emotional experience. Engagement CTA number 2, around 8 minutes. If you're recognizing your own patterns in these psychological reasons, like this video right now, comment below and tell me which reason resonates most with your own experience. Subscribe if you haven't, because the next reasons go deeper into specific patterns most intelligent men never identify in themselves. Section 4. Reason number 3, social hesitation, when analysis prevents action. The third psychological reason is social hesitation. And this is where the gap between knowing and doing becomes most visible and most costly. From a psychological standpoint, social hesitation is the behavioral consequence of overthinking. The intelligent mind has analyzed the situation so thoroughly, anticipated so many possible negative outcomes, and generated so much internal uncertainty that action becomes genuinely difficult. The man knows what he should do, he just can't make himself do it. Here's the psychological mechanism. Every time an intelligent man imagines approaching a woman, initiating a conversation, or expressing interest, his mind immediately generates a comprehensive risk assessment. What if she's not interested? What if I say something awkward? What if I misread the situation? What if this goes wrong? These aren't irrational fears. They're the product of a genuinely sophisticated mind doing what it does best, predicting negative outcomes to avoid them. But here's the psychological truth about attraction. Women respond to men who take action. Decisiveness, initiative, and willingness to take social risk are all deeply attractive psychological signals. They communicate confidence, they communicate security, they communicate that this is a man who leads rather than waits. When a man hesitates, when he knows the moment to act has arrived and he doesn't just miss the opportunity, he communicates something about himself. His hesitation is visible in his energy, his body language, his delayed response. She might not consciously identify it as hesitation, but she feels it as something being off, as uncertainty, as a lack of confidence, and uncertainty is not attractive. Psychologically, the only cure for social hesitation is repeated action in the presence of discomfort. Not analysis, not preparation. Action. Because confidence in social situations is not built through mental rehearsal, it's built through doing. Every time an intelligent man acts despite internal hesitation, he provides his brain with evidence that action is survivable, that discomfort is manageable, that confidence is justified. Section 5. Reason. Number 4. High standards and perfectionism when excellence becomes isolation. The fourth psychological reason is the combination of high standards and perfectionism. And this one is particularly insidious because it feels like a virtue, but it functions like a trap. From a psychological standpoint, intelligent men tend to have exceptionally high standards for themselves, for their work, for their partners, and for their interactions. This is natural and appropriate in many domains, but in dating, rigid perfectionism creates two specific problems that undermine success. The first problem is that perfectionism prevents action. The intelligent man is waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect context, the perfect version of himself to appear before he acts. But that perfect version never arrives. And while he's waiting for ideal conditions, real opportunities disappear. Here's what's happening psychologically. Perfectionism is a form of fear management. The perfectionist believes that if everything is perfect, rejection becomes impossible, or at least less likely. But this belief creates paralysis because perfection is unachievable. And the pursuit of perfection as a fear management strategy actually increases anxiety rather than reducing it. The second problem is that perfectionism creates emotional distance. When a man is evaluating a woman through a perfectionist lens, constantly assessing whether she meets his criteria, comparing her to an internal ideal, analyzing compatibility systematically, she feels it. She senses the evaluation. And being evaluated rather than experienced is not an attractive feeling. Psychologically, attraction requires presence, the experience of being seen and engaged with as a full human being in real time. When a man's mind is running a compatibility assessment instead of being genuinely present, the emotional connection that generates attraction cannot develop. The psychological solution is not to lower standards, it's to separate evaluation from presence. Be fully present in the interaction first. Allow genuine connection to develop. Then, over time and with actual evidence, evaluate compatibility. This sequencing allows attraction to build naturally before intellectual assessment closes it down prematurely. Section 6. Reason, Nerf 5, fear of rejection when anticipation becomes the obstacle. The fifth psychological reason is fear of rejection. And for intelligent men, This fear operates at a uniquely sophisticated and uniquely paralyzing level. From a psychological perspective, intelligent minds are extraordinarily good at anticipating negative outcomes. This is a genuinely useful capability in most domains. It allows intelligent men to identify risks, prepare contingencies, and avoid predictable failures. But in dating, this same capability becomes a mechanism of self-sabotage. Here's the psychological dynamic. Before an intelligent man even acts, his mind has already played out multiple scenarios of rejection in vivid detail. He's imagined her disinterest, her polite dismissal, the awkwardness that might follow, the embarrassment he might feel. He's experienced the rejection mentally before attempting the approach, and having pre-experienced it, he now carries the emotional weight of anticipated failure into the actual interaction, or uses it as justification not to act at all. Women experience this as hesitation, tension, or lack of confidence. They can't see the sophisticated risk analysis happening internally. What they observe is a man who appears uncertain, guarded, or reluctant, and that presentation undermines attraction regardless of his actual qualities. Here's the critical psychological reframe. Rejection is not a reflection of permanent value. It's information about compatibility and timing. The most attractive, successful men in dating experience rejection regularly. They simply don't allow it to function as evidence of unworthiness. They process it, extract what's useful, and move forward. From a psychological standpoint, developing resilience to rejection requires experiential exposure, actually experiencing rejection, and surviving it repeatedly until the brain's threat assessment recalibrates. There's no shortcut. The only way to stop fearing rejection is to experience it without catastrophic consequences enough times that the fear loses its power. Engagement, CTA 3, around 18 minutes. If these psychological patterns are giving you new insight into your own behavior, comment below right now. Tell me which reason has been holding you back most. And like this video because the final 2 reasons are the deepest ones, and the ones most intelligent men have never had named for them clearly. Section 7. Reason number 6. Difficulty with playfulness. When seriousness kills chemistry, the 6th psychological reason is difficulty with playfulness. And this one surprises many intelligent men because they don't see it as a dating skill. They see it as frivolity. That misunderstanding is itself part of the problem. From a psychological standpoint, playfulness is not a superficial quality in attraction. It's a fundamental one. Playfulness communicates safety, confidence, and emotional availability. When a man can be playful, he's demonstrating that he's not rigidly controlled by self-consciousness, that he's comfortable taking social risks, that he doesn't take himself so seriously that he can't be spontaneous. Women respond to playfulness because it creates a specific emotional experience, lightness, joy, the pleasure of unexpected moments, the excitement of not knowing exactly what comes next. This emotional experience is deeply attractive, and it's the complete opposite of what overthinking and analysis produce. Here's the psychological tension for intelligent men. Playfulness requires letting go of control. It requires acting without knowing exactly how the action will land. It requires willingness to be slightly imperfect, slightly exposed, slightly vulnerable in the interest of creating a spontaneous moment. And for men whose minds are conditioned to control, analyze, and minimize risk. This feels genuinely uncomfortable. The result is that intelligent men often present as serious, measured, and controlled in dating contexts. They might be funny in other contexts, playful with friends, genuinely humorous in comfortable settings. But in dating interactions where self-consciousness is heightened, the playful dimension disappears. And with it goes the chemistry, the lightness, and the emotional energy that makes attraction feel exciting, rather than transactional. The psychological solution is practicing deliberate playfulness in low-stakes contexts until it becomes natural. Teasing lightly, making unexpected observations, not correcting yourself when you say something imperfect, allowing conversations to go in unplanned directions. These practices build comfort with spontaneity until it becomes available even when self-consciousness is present. Section 8. Reason. The number 7. Fear of vulnerability, the deepest barrier of all. The seventh and final psychological reason is fear of vulnerability. And this is the deepest one, because it operates at the level of identity, not just behavior. From a psychological standpoint, intelligent men often build their identity heavily around competence and control. They know things, they solve problems, they understand how systems work. Their intelligence is a core part of how they define and value themselves. And vulnerability, genuine emotional openness, the admission of uncertainty, the expression of feelings that aren't fully controlled, threatens that identity at its foundation. Now, here's the psychological reality. Vulnerability requires accepting that you might be seen in a way that's not fully competent or controlled. It requires exposing emotional experience that can't be perfectly managed. It requires trusting another person with parts of yourself that are uncertain, imperfect, or in process. For men who define themselves through intellectual mastery, this feels like exposure of weakness rather than expression of strength. But here's what the psychology reveals. Women experience vulnerability completely differently than intelligent men imagine. What intelligent men experience is weakness, the admission of uncertainty, the expression of genuine feeling, the willingness to be seen without full control. Women experience as courage, as emotional maturity, as the signal that this man can actually connect at a deep level rather than remaining perpetually behind an intellectual wall. From a psychological standpoint, vulnerability is not the absence of strength. It's strength expressed through emotional openness. A man who can be both competent and emotionally open, both intelligent and genuinely vulnerable, is extraordinarily rare. And rarity in attraction creates desire. Here's the critical psychological insight. The wall that fear of vulnerability builds doesn't protect intelligent men from rejection. It guarantees a specific kind of distance, the distance of never being truly known. Women can be impressed by a man behind a wall, but they cannot feel deeply attracted to someone they can't actually reach. The psychological work is separating vulnerability from weakness at an identity level, understanding that emotional openness doesn't diminish intelligence, it completes it, that being seen in uncertainty doesn't reduce competence, it reveals humanity. That genuine connection requires exactly the kind of imperfect exposure that fear of vulnerability prevents. Final section, the integration. Turning intelligence into a dating advantage. When all 7 psychological reasons are understood together, a clear picture emerges. Intelligent men don't struggle with dating because they're too smart. They struggle because their intelligence hasn't yet been integrated with emotional awareness, authentic presence, and genuine vulnerability. The overthinking, the emotional blind spots, the social hesitation, the perfectionism, the fear of rejection, the difficulty with playfulness, the fear of vulnerability. These are all expressions of the same underlying dynamic. Intelligence used defensively rather than openly. When intelligence is used defensively, it analyzes, protects, controls, and minimizes risk. It produces impressive but emotionally distant men who women find interesting but not magnetic. When intelligence is used openly, combined with emotional awareness, genuine presence, playful spontaneity, and authentic vulnerability, it becomes one of the most attractive qualities a man can possess. Here's the final psychological truth. Women are not repelled by intelligence. They're repelled by intelligence that closes rather than opens. Intelligence that evaluates rather than connects. Intelligence that performs rather than reveals. The path forward is not to become less intelligent. It's to become more complete, to integrate the depth of mind with the warmth of emotional presence, the analytical capability with the courage to be genuinely seen, the capacity for complex thinking with the willingness to act spontaneously and imperfectly. When that integration happens, intelligence stops being a barrier and becomes exactly what it should always have been, the ultimate advantage. Final engagement CTA, around 25 minutes. If this video gave you psychological clarity about patterns you've been living with but never had clearly named, comment below. Tell me which of the 7 reasons explains the most about your own experience with dating. Tell me what you're going to work on first. Like this video if it helped. Share it with an intelligent man who needs this perspective. And subscribe to Secrets Inside the Mind, because this is the level of psychological depth that actually changes how you understand yourself and how you show up in every relationship. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.